Welcome to RPTV News. The Regent Park Youth Outreach Workers Program, also known as YOWs, provides interventions to at-risk youth in the Regent Park community. In today's episode of RPTV News, we will find out who they are and what they do.
Hi, my name is Mona. I work at Central Neighborhood House as a youth outreach worker.
Hi, my name is Fawad Kermian. I'm a provincial youth outreach worker with Central Neighborhood House in the Regent Park community.
What we do as youth outreach workers is work with youth 12 to 24 years of age and their families. We support them in providing them with education and training opportunities, mentorship. If they require assistance with family supports, better communication with their families, if they're in conflict with the law, if they're struggling through different stages in their life, if they're in transition. So we support them. We provide one-on-one counseling to them so that they are better equipped in handling those difficult and challenging situations in their lives.
So as a provincial youth outreach worker, one of our main job descriptions in our community is to actually connect youth to a magnitude of services available within their community and beyond that would support them with the current needs that they're going through. We work very closely with a wide range of partners within our community and within the downtown core to ensure that when we do refer these young people to get supports and the services that they need, it's a smooth transition for them. And then making sure that it's a successful transaction between the person we're referring to and for the young person themselves.
We're more than just a signpost in referring them to different services in the community. As one of my colleagues likes to say in the Provincial Youth Outreach Worker Program, it's really about making sure that when you're referring that person, that is you're following up as well. So a lot of the work that we do is following up with the young person and their family to make sure that those are the services that they required, that they needed, and that they actually end up getting. So one of my other roles is, in addition to being a mentor, a counselor, someone that the youth can go to get supports, information. I also do the formal counseling, so really on a drop-in basis. So one-on-one therapeutic counseling on a short-term basis. It's basically no hassle, no fuss, no intake, no form filling. It's on a drop-in basis to youth 12 and over up to 24 years of age on on sort of a short-term basis, but I do follow up with them again on an ongoing basis if they do require more than 6 sessions. So think of it as a walk-in counseling clinic. There are many mental health services in the area that we do end up referring them if they need and require that support for long term. And of course, treatment centers, if they need to be linked up with a doctor, a physician, a psychologist, child psychiatrist, we also do those services with them. But it really is, before I do the clinical counseling with them, you do require the engagement with them. A lot of the referrals that I do end up getting are with youth that maybe I've never worked with before. So we do still start, just like youth outreach workers do, in engaging and building that trust and relationship, so that we can get to know each other, make sure that I'm a good fit for them, and that's counseling is something that they are ready. So helping them, again, in the different stages, in transitions, in stressful situation, they're dealing with anxiety, depression. It might not be diagnosed, but it's something that they're dealing with. Self-esteem, substance abuse, use, conflict with the law, anger management, just a whole array of different issues that young people are facing. So do help them in the work that we do. They actually are the ones that are leading those therapeutic discussions. It has to be something that, again, that they are asking for, that they are consenting to, and that it's a process. We're working together. Really, that's what it's about. And again, following up with them at the end of those sessions.
So as a provincial youth outreach worker, I talked a little bit about how we connect with young people and refer them to the services that they might need. In addition to that, as a provincial youth outreach worker, it's a part of our job is to actually do some informal mentorship with some of the youth regarding leadership, employment readiness skills, building these young people's capacities so that, again, when we do refer them to gain employment, it's a successful transaction for them, and they're able to actually mitigate a lot of the challenges that they go through before getting those supports. In addition to that, working alongside the right stakeholders in the community to work with these youth, because as a youth outreach worker, we have the flexibility to actually go into spaces where some program staff that might not be able to actually leave their spaces to connect and build authentic relationships to better support the young community members in our community. So, for example, going into the Daniel Spectrum and connecting with the community hub manager there to be able to utilize some of the spaces there to actually have one-on-one conversations with our youth in a more neutral setting that will help them get to where they want to go. In addition to that too, we also do hosting some workshops, hosting events that fit the needs of our modern youth. For example, very recently I did a workshop where I was able to teach young people how to invest their money into real estate, because one of the things that they were always talking about is how can we generate more money? How do we connect with youth? So for myself, I connect with youth in 3 different ways. The first way I connected with youth was I already had previous experience working in the Regent Park community, so I've already had familiarity with some of the young people in the community. So what I did when I first started my job was connect with those young people that I already knew to start meeting more young people in other spaces. In addition to that, another way I connect with youth was through other agencies and partners in our community that are already doing the great work that we can support with. For example, again, connecting with Pathways and we're connecting with Jason from Pathways and being, hey, I'm in the community as a provincial youth outreach worker. If there's any way I can support your young person, please don't hesitate to reach out. And actually visiting some of these spaces and being active in some of the spaces in our community. For myself, I've gone to a magnitude of spaces in the community to actually come in and check in, but before going into doing that, my goal was, again, to build more relationships in the community, and not just with agencies and young people, but with other stakeholders, with some of the businesses in the community, with some of the public spaces in the community, meet more of the parents in the community. So it's not just that they're familiar with the provincial YOW program with their young person, but it's building that foundation in the community so that longer term, the more connections that you have, the easier it will be to connect with these young people, because at some level, a lot of our young people do connect with multiple people within one community. So it's great to have that relationship. And the last way I connect with young people is attending events outside the community as well that these young people might be going to. So going to basketball tournaments, going to more sporting events, going to school functions that you already have connections with some of those schools to support in school, because again, we have the flexibility to work in multiple spaces and not be fixed behind a desk. We talked a little bit about connecting with the youth in our community, but one of the most important things to be successful as a provincial youth outreach worker is actually being co-signed in the community. So first of all, what I mean by being co-signed in the community is at some level, there are people within the community, whether that be community members, whether that be agency staff, whether that be program staff, who actually are familiar with your work and can vouch for you with these young people. So that cosign is basically someone vouching for you and saying that, you know, this person I've worked with, I trust them, they do great work, connect with them if you need to. So that's just a little bit about what cosign is. But in our line of work, why it's so important is because, again, one of our biggest assets is the community as a whole. So for me to be able to successfully work with a young person in a Daniel Spectrum, I need to connect with a community hub manager. Then that way, now the community hub manager can co-sign me within the space so that I have the freedom and flexibility to walk into a space and work with a young person. Or another one could be getting co-signed by the youth themselves. We host an event where 10 youth come. You start building authentic relationships with these young people. If you are doing the right work, you don't have to do outreach, because what ends up happening in this modern world with young people is they start talking about you to other people. And then that's where their cosign comes in. So now they're saying, hey, did you talk to Fod? Yeah, he really cares. He's doing this, and go talk to him. That's a cosign. And without that cosign, it makes our job very difficult, because again, we have assets in this community that we work with. We have young people in this community that we work with. And all of it comes together. It takes a village to build a village. And without that cosign, it's very hard to build that village.
Before I mentioned all the ways in which provincial YOWs engage with youth, and here in Regent Park and surrounding neighborhoods, of course, it's very close-knit. You do need to have people vouch for you. But I also think because the way that we're located too, you have more opportunities to see people, of course, in the warmer months, but even in the cooler months. But I would also like to add an addition to an additional way in which we engage with youth, and that's online, of course, right? So I mean, people tend to think you in real life, that's real life, but online is just as real. We can't escape in our daily lives being on social media. So a little bit of what we do is we have accounts on Instagram, and the youth themselves can see what we're doing, and they can, like for me especially, I know that it is difficult for you to approach me in face to face and start talking about getting mental health supports from me. So that's another way that they can get in touch with me. Again, it's no judgment, hassle-free. But just, if they have an inquiry about getting, help with depression, anxiety, stress, and so making sure that they are aware. So it is really creating an awareness about how we're really open to mental health, making sure that they know that there are not as many barriers to mental health, getting mental health support for them or for their loved one if they know, or for a friend. So really doing that, they can always text me or DM me, and I would give them that information. But of course, that would then lead to engaging with them face to face. But that is the first step for people to reach out to me, or to even like a lot of the other services in the community as well. In our agency, we do have I would like to say that we do have a trauma-informed lens because of the work that we do in the community. Our space really is created to be safe, barrier-free for people who have experienced trauma in the community, and when they come into our space or they're working with us, that we do keep in mind that in all likelihood they're more often than not have experienced trauma in their lives. So there's different ways in which we can respond to that, making sure that we have a physically safe and emotionally safe environment for them to receive the programs and services from us. So of course, we still have a long way to go, but I think in starting to recognize that our community has been impacted, and those individuals that are coming to receive services from Fouad and I, or even just coming to our space, we keep that at the back of our head at all times. So because we are frontline workers and because we're youth outreach workers, we're more likely to be sort of on the ground when things in the community do happen, a lot of the negative things. So when a crisis does happen, we do tend to mobilize with our partners very quickly and respond to the residents, children and youth, families who have been directly and indirectly impacted by the crisis. So it is crisis intervention work that we do, but we don't do it alone. So we most often, we're on the ground, we observe, we listen, we are there for the people that we're working with, but also the larger community, right? So in recognizing that their needs, and if they need information and support, we provide that to them. But we do work with our partners to maintain a sense of safety to them, and really be cognizant of the fact that it is a difficult time that they're going through, and of course that will be like in the first few hours, in the first few weeks, and of course in the months leading following the incident that's taken place.
So, as my colleague mentioned a little bit about how we deal with crisis, I'll share with you a little bit more about some of the process that we take. So, when a crisis does occur in the community, as a provincial youth outreach worker, because of our connections in the community and because of the people that we know and people that we interact with on a daily basis, when a crisis does occur, one of the first steps that we can take is actually help mobilize some of the key stakeholders that might be impacted when it comes with a crisis. So for example, if there was a crisis in the community and we have relationships with some of the units with the City of Toronto, giving them a call and letting them know that a crisis just occurred, to have them mobilized as well. Connecting with some of the frontline workers in the community to see maybe they actually have a deeper relationship with the young person that's involved in the crisis or the family that's involved in the crisis, and connecting them and bridging them to that person during the crisis so that it's actually a more comfortable support process. So when dealing with a crisis with young people in the community, one of the really important aspects of our role in the community is when we're actually not in the community, when a crisis occurs, with the deep relationships that we've been able to build in the community, we get reached out to when the crisis actually happens during that time, and how we're able to support the community. Obviously, if we're there, boots on the ground, supporting all the other frontline workers with what they might need, having that flexibility to go places that they might not be able to go, so we have those partnerships in place so that when crises do occur, we can support that way. But the other part is identifying who needs to be involved when there's a crisis, and making sure we mobilize all the assets available in the community to directly support that crisis. In addition to that, being able to be supportive to the young people who are dealing with these crises is very important. They might reach out to us when the crisis happens. They might reach out to us the next day. We might actually know more young people who are being impacted, and again, not necessarily doing it alone, but identifying who might be who might have the best relationship with this young person in the community, and make sure they are aware that this crisis just occurs so they can help impact this young person in a positive way, because they have that trusting relationship that might be deeper than ours. And if that trusting relationship isn't necessarily available at the time, then we're able to then refer this young person to gain the right supports needed to overcome what they recently just dealt with.
So after a youth has come to us, and when I'm working with them, they've told me that they're going through a difficult time, a transition, a change in their lives, and they're not quite. It's clear that they're not quite adjusting to the change and adapting to the change, right? And that's where resiliency is important, and really helping youth build resiliency in themselves. Basically, resiliency means being able to bounce back from a setback, right? We've all been through changes and setbacks and challenges and difficulties in our lives. Of course, youth themselves have so as well. It's just sometimes it's a little difficult for them because they may not necessarily have the tools and the strategies to help them, get back to how things used to be, or really help them not only get back to how things used to be, but really help them sort of improve on how, build them up more and stronger, so that the next time that they have a challenge or a setback, that they're more likely to sort of handle, go through the storm and handle it a little bit better, right? A lot of times youth, in the work that I do, I would ask them, what has worked for you in the past? A lot of times they don't realize that they already have those tools and strategies themselves, but it's a matter of just maybe relearning them and maybe practicing them a little bit more often, so that again, for the next time, because we might not be with them, of course, as much as we'd like to. We're not going to be in their lives forever, right? So really, in the follow-up work that I do, making sure that they're keeping up with the practices they themselves set out for themselves, tools and strategies, so that they can help not only cope, but really build up their resiliency and the work. So I think that's really a key component in the work that we do.
So one of the ways that I'm able to actually connect with young people to build resiliency and support them with the healing aspect is just making sure that as a provincial youth outreach worker, we're available when they need to reach out to us. Some of the pieces when it comes to building the resiliency that also comes with supporting them in their development and leadership skills so that they're actually reversing their roles from being dependent to interdependent members. Not independent, interdependent, because we want them to be able to navigate these challenges, to have the strength to navigate the challenges that are coming their way, because as they're getting older, a lot more barriers and challenges are going to come. But we also want them to have that opportunity to realize that when they do need to reach out to the person that they trust for support, we're also available. And by doing that, we're empowering them and building their skills to actually be able to navigate the issue, but also not pulling away and saying that we're not going to be there when we need to be.
The work that we do, of course, is in Regent Park and surrounding areas, which is predominantly low-income, racialized, people who are racialized and low-income live. And their families and the youth, of course. So we can't really take away, the poverty and Islamophobia, the systemic racism, anti-Black racism that they face in, many institutions, right? So, of course, we work in a nonprofit, and we have an anti-oppressive, anti-Islamophobia, philosophy. But we really do, when we are working with the youth, a lot of, for example, mental health, we do have to realize that predominantly low-income Black people from Africa, I can speak for myself, is that when they do come into this country, they are affected by these systems, and that does have an impact on their mental health. So we do have to recognize that, and when we are working with them. So although we are working with them so that they can, we provide tools and coping strategies to change, for the better, but we also have to recognize there are all these external factors that they're dealing with, right? In the work that we do, we have positive factors and negative factors, right? Or risk factors. So we do have to take it as a whole, as much as we are strengths-based. So we are looking at the person and their strengths and their positive, protective factors, but there are also these external risk factors that they are dealing with day in and day out, and that can take a toll on the person, the young person and their family. So we do have to be cognizant of that fact. And of course, the majority of Regent Park residents are, I think the last Statistics Canada was that they are below the low-income cutoff. So these families are earning something like less than $48,000 a year. So that does have an impact when we are referring them to services and programs that they may not be able to afford. So we have to be sensitive of that fact that they're coming from these households that are earning this much money, and their families are struggling, and there's a lot of issues, housing, employment, health. So we do have to recognize when we're doing that work.
So when talking about the structural barriers, one of the ways that it impacts our work is creating advocates, is showing them how to advocate against these systems, but in a positive way, in a way that will actually help them see systemic change, because that's where the high-level systemic change is what's impacting them on the front line and on the ground level to these community members. So our role when again, large systemic barriers come into play is connecting with the greater assets in the community, because it's going to take a lot more than one person to support with these systemic issues. In addition to that, creating advocates, showing them that if you really want to see change, these are the effective ways of trying to get change, and helping them through that process. And then even further than that too is understanding that we're all human. So dissecting it together, operating like a community, like a family, because these challenges that we see when we say things like our youth are at risk, that is for sure. But what about talking about them as if they're at opportunity, right? Changing the narrative of these systemic problems that occur in our community. That's what we really need to focus on, is showing the community what their assets are and what their strengths are and how they can utilize those strengths to overcome these systemic barriers in the community. What I would like to add to this interview as a provincial youth outreach worker is, first of all, to say thank you, because to get the cosign, to get the buy-in from the community, to be able to do this work alongside the community, and that includes a magnitude of people, like I said, community members, community agencies, all the people who have been doing work in this community before this program and will be doing this work in the community after this program. Connecting with them, say thank you to them, because you've made it possible for us to be a part of the system that can support young people within this community. One of the main reasons why I personally chose to be in this field and work with these young people is I came from a background of business. I don't have a authentic education in social work or in child and youth work. I actually have a degree in concentrating in business administration, a bachelor's of commerce in business administration. And while I was doing that, I realized one thing was I would love to work in communities where we can support young people to start becoming stronger entrepreneurs and actually building their skill sets and being there as a big brother, big sister, whatever the hat that we need to wear, to just support them and bring out of them what is inside. See, we always talk about formulas and big fancy words, but the best work that I've seen done is when you have an authentic relationship with a community member, whether that's the family or the young person, where you can actually sit there and have open and meaningful conversations that can lead this young person from being reversed from an at-risk youth to a leader of today, because that's what they are. So I just want to say thank you to the community for allowing for us to be here for that. And it's been a privilege to be able to serve, because I wake up every day doing something that I love to do. As much as it's very stressful and hard, but with the right supports in place and with the right people in place and with the team that's available in this community, a lot of great work is being done by a lot of people. And for me, just a simple thank you for letting me be a part of that journey.
I really like the work that I do, mostly because I get to work with youth, older children, youth, and their families in a deeply personal way. A lot of times they let you in their lives, but also they let you in their homes, their sanctuaries for the most part. And I do the outreach, I meet them in the community, interact with them, but a lot of times they do tell you very personal stories, and of course, I have to keep it confidential and respect that. But it is really awe-inspiring, the fact that a lot of the youth are quote unquote disadvantaged, but and they face real adversity. So it is a reality check every day, but it also is, like Fuad said, a privilege and an honor to serve them. Being from the community, I think that I see now that a lot of the youth were, maybe were not connected to YOWs before, that they are now, and they can definitely benefit from that. And a lot of the ones that are older than 24 tell me like, oh, that's cool. I wasn't connected with the community. I wasn't connected with a child youth worker. I wasn't connected with this program. But now that I see you doing it, I'm glad that now my brothers and sisters can benefit from that. And of course, all youth are different. Some are very connected, but some are not. They're a little bit isolated. So being able to reach out to those youth and children and families to make sure that they are engaged in the community, that they see themselves served in the community, that they can see someone that speaks their language, literally speaks their language, and is from their community. And of course, we do serve all youth, not just ones that are from descendant of Africans or Muslim, identify themselves as Black, but really work with a wide variety of youth. But just to see someone of color, a woman that they can approach, and that's really they're more comfortable with, I would say for the most part, and talking with them and really laying it on the ground and inviting them. And a lot of the residents of Regent Park are very friendly, and they do that anyways. But I think that it is short of a little bit of a shortcut in getting to know them and getting to find what they need, what they really want, and what their hopes and their dreams are for their children or even the youth themselves. What just the sky's the limit, and helping them reach that. So seeing a youth that maybe I was working with like a year and a half ago, to see how far they've come is really quite rewarding. So that just reminds me why I do the work that I do.
Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more information, follow us on all our social media platforms. And don't forget to visit our website as well as comment down below what you thought about this video.